Hi, welcome back. I'm Colin, and today we're looking at a $319 DAC from SMSL, the D200. I've developed a real appreciation for ROHM DAC chips throughout my time reviewing different DAC units. While it's true that ROHM DAC chips might not always measure as perfectly on paper than the more mainstream options, what really attracts me to them is their unique tonality and musicality. After my experience with the IFPUUBHC DC Elite and the SMSL D1, I had high hopes for this unit. It did not disappoint. It was exactly what I expected, but better. Most DACs at this price point use a standard aluminum tube construction with separate front and back plates. SMSL stepped it up here. The D200 features a chassis built from a solid block of aluminum, giving it a premium look and a more solid chassis. The top case and all four sides is one whole block of aluminum. The attention to detail continues underneath with high quality footers featuring a sandwich material design and soft silicone for vibration absorption. Inside, we have an integrated power supply with dedicated power filtering. And I love that they use a standard IEC socket with an integrated power supply. No need for an external power brick. On the back, you get one set of XLR balanced and RCA unbalanced outputs. There's also a clock in port. An external clock provides a more precise timing signal than the internal one, which can further reduce jitter and sharpen the imaging. It's worth noting that SMSL actually makes an external clock specifically designed to pair with the D200. For wired digital inputs, there's USB, optical, and coaxial. Up front, the screen is crisp and legible. Basically, everything can be done via the multifunction knob. You just push it to enter the menu or power on off, and spin to navigate. For wireless, the D200 uses a high-end Qualcomm Bluetooth chip. The antenna is nice and compact. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. It supports high-res codecs including LDAC and aptX HD, so you aren't sacrificing much quality if you want to stream quickly from your phone. I tested the Bluetooth input with both my iPhone and my IFPUUBHC DX260 Mark II, and both devices were able to send over metadata like song titles and artist names with no problem using Tidal. Now this unit is supposed to be able to display lyrics as well. However, in my testing, I couldn't get the lyrics to work with either device. I'm not sure if it's a compatibility issue with Tidal specifically or the devices themselves, but it's something to keep in mind if that feature is a priority for you. Let's dive into the menu system, which is slightly complex for a DAC at this price. First up, it's the input section. This is straightforward, allowing you to toggle between USB, Bluetooth, optical, and coaxial. Moving to outputs, you have a choice of all lineup, where everything plays simultaneously, or keep it restricted to just balanced or unbalanced only. Next, clock in setting. For more technical users, you can choose between the internal clock or an external clock if you're looking to improve that timing precision with a dedicated master clock. Then we have the filters. For PCM, you have the standard slow and sharp roll-off options, or you can turn them off entirely. One thing I noticed is that when you set it to filter off, the output volumes drop significantly, almost by half, and the sound can get quite distorted. It's like bypassing the oversampling in a way the chip doesn't like. So I'd highly recommend sticking to the slow or sharp settings for the best performance. For DSD, you can choose between narrow, normal, and wide bandwidth to suit your preference. What really sets this unit apart is the sound color selection. Most DACs only give you access to standard digital filters, but this gives you settings that affect the DAC at a hardware level. In here, OSR, or oversampling rate, toggles between low and high. High oversampling pushes digital noise further out of the audible range for a cleaner top end. Then there's HPC, high precision control. Keeping this on maximizes the mathematical precision of the chip for a more stable, focused soundstage. Personally, I did notice a shift in soundstage when I toggle the HPC setting on and off. The D200 also offers a pre-mode, letting you use it as a pure fixed level DAC or as a preamp with volume control. It has sufficient output voltage on its own, meaning you don't necessarily need an external preamp to drive an amplifier to full volume. You can also customize the function key on the remote. This is a great shortcut for quick access to things like your outputs, Bluetooth settings, or phase. Next is audio phase function. This allows you to invert the signal phase specifically for the XLR outputs. This exists because some older equipment, particularly Japanese brands like Audiophile, uses a different pinout standard. This setting lets you correct that compatibility issue digitally, so you don't have to use special phase inverted cables. Then there's the language setting. Finally, you can adjust the display settings, including brightness and dimmer options. I personally prefer keeping the screen off when it's playing. But if you use the D200 as the volume control, you might want to turn the screen always on, so you know what volume the device is at all times. Now let's look at this remote. There's nothing particularly special about the hardware. It's the standard SMSL remote, but it is functional and allows you to access every single menu setting without having to touch the unit. In addition, the arrow buttons act as play, pause, next and previous track buttons when you are using Bluetooth. It makes the wireless experience feel a lot more convenient. Before we dive into my sound impressions, let me show you how I've integrated the D200 into my current setup. For this review, I'm using the ROHM streamer as my source, connected to the D200 via USB. From there, I'm running XLR out into the Fosi ZP3 preamp, which then feeds a pair of Fosi V3 mono amplifiers. Finally, everything is being played through my Daly Menuet speakers. Now, comparing the SMSL D1, which is an $80 DAC that uses the same chip, the D200 is a big step forward. Both share that signature musical, analog-like warmth, but the D200 has much better detail retrieval, especially in the upper mids and treble area. The detail and separation of the D200 are on another level. The upper mid-range and treble have so much more air, you can hear the natural decay of notes and tiny harmonics that were lost in the D1. When listening to acoustic tracks, the sound of fingers sliding on guitar strings and the snap of the snare drum have incredible layering and depth. The soundstage is holographic and is significantly wider and deeper than the more budget D1. It expands wide and deep while still anchoring that punchy textured bass and full mid-range. I spent a lot of time listening to Nirvana's MTV Unplugged album with this DAC. I was able to hear more details and even more of those small blemishes in the recording, which I really enjoy. It's an overall improvement from the D1, but it's most obvious in the soundstage and treble. To get the most out of my system, my favorite setting was with OSR high and HPC on. The HPC setting in particular really changed the depth and accuracy of the soundstage presentation for me, making the placement of instruments feel deeper and much more defined on my system. I also compared it to the Fosi ZD3 DAC, which I've upgraded with an i5 iPower X power supply and Burson V7V op-amps, bringing its total cost to around $540. The Fosi ZD3 offers a sharper, tighter sound with faster transients and a very precise imaging. However, moving back to the D200, it was apparent that the SMSL has the edge in the musicality and naturalness of the sound. What really stood out to me in the D200 is the fullness of the mid-range and vocals, which gives it a much fuller analog character and a less clinical sound compared to the Fosi. The ZD3 delivers slightly more subtle treble detail, but the soundstage of the D200 feels both wider and deeper than the ZD3, even if the imaging isn't quite as locked in as the Fosi. The SMSL D200 gets a highly recommended by me. Pretty sure you will not get something significantly better for under $1,000 in a standalone DAC. It's perfect if you love a musical and analog-like sound. While it's true that some other DACs might measure slightly better in this price bracket, I think the D200 really excels in tonality. The DAC sounds really good right out of the box, but if you want to get geeky and really dive into the settings, you can use the digital filters and those sound color options to really tune the sound to exactly what you are looking for. Plus, you have the ability to use it with that external clock SMSL makes, It's not cheap, but I'm definitely intrigued to see what difference it makes and if it can elevate this DAC even further if I have a chance to try it. So this is my review of the SMSL D200. I am very happy that I get a chance to review this DAC. I really like it, and I think it punches above its weight. Let me know if you have any questions about the D200 in the comments.